I'm of two minds when it comes to Lincoln's legacy. On the one hand, he was a brutal criminal who killed God knows how many people.
And I'm about to tell you, because Lincoln Clay is a killing machine. While his counterparts in Tommy and Vito are capable in their own right, Lincoln is on a whole other level. After a brutal betrayal that kills his father and brother and nearly kills him as well, Lincoln is highly motivated to dismantle Sal Marcano's organization piece by piece and take over the city himself. This leads to a massive kill count that neither Tommy or Vito can even come close to. Just how much does the population of New Bordeaux decrease during Lincoln's rampage against the mob?
He wanted to terrify the mob, wanted them to know he was going to kill every last one of them, and that none of them would be able to stop him.
Lincoln was born in 1945 and abandoned by his mother at the age of 2. He grew up in an orphanage until it closed its doors at 13 years old. He was taken in by a man named Sammy Robinson, who raised Lincoln as one of his own, but he still felt like an outcast and sought a sense of belonging, which ultimately led to him joining the army and fighting in Vietnam. He spent a few years there and participated in some operations as part of the Special Forces, so he almost assuredly killed some people over there, but none are ever confirmed directly, and I can't just pull numbers out of my ass. He eventually returns to New Bordeaux February 20th, 1968. He intends to stay just a couple of days to say his goodbyes to Sammy and his brother Ellis before continuing on to California to start anew. Ellis pulls up in Lincoln's Dominic Toretto mobile and they drive to Sammy's bar for a celebration. Lincoln elects to cap his night off in the basement.
Man, that wall must have really fucked you up.
And when he wakes up the following morning, he finds out a gang of Haitians are giving Sammy some trouble and preventing him from paying his dues to the Marcano crime family, who oversees most of the rackets in the city. Sammy doesn't want Lincoln to worry, so he asks him to go help Father James serve some gumbo to the needy, which he does until the Haitians come in and cause a ruckus and get their tuchus beat down by Lincoln. These won't be counted as kills since he's simply whooping some ass. Lincoln reports back to Sammy, who decides to loop Lincoln in and request his help. The Haitians are stealing from Sammy, which is bringing some heat from Sal Marcano, so if Lincoln and Ellis can put them down, he can make things right with Sal. The two brothers approach by boat, and while Lincoln gets the dirty work done, Ellis will get a car and prepare to grab Lincoln in a hurry. He swims to the dock and starts the job quietly, knocking out 6 guys before he's spotted, and things devolve into a good old-fashioned firefight, where the first 10 kills of the game are recorded. He locates their leader Baca and shows him what it's like to be an owl. A woman crawls out from behind a wall and angrily beats on his corpse for keeping her as a slave, but after a couple of minutes she runs off as more Haitians arrive to die at the hands of Lincoln Clay. Ella shows up right as Lincoln is wrapping up and they report their success back to Sammy, who says Sal Marcano wants to meet him down at a country club. He meets up with Georgie Marcano and his father Sal, who introduce Lincoln to Mafia II's protagonist Vito Scaletta. They bond over their time in the military before Vito departs and leaves Sal behind to talk his shit.
Christ, that guy's an asshole. Fucking carpetbagger.
After getting that off his chest, he hires Lincoln into a robbery they have planned. Vito is fronting his own cash in order for them to steal even more cash from the Federal Reserve. On top of that, Sal wants Lincoln to usurp Sammy and lead the Hollow District in the city, but Lincoln is loyal and refuses to do that to his Farger. Sal's disappointment is apparent, but he moves on and says once the robbery is done, then Sammy and him will be square. One day before the heist, Lincoln examines a drill they plan to use to enter the vault from below. We cut to Lincoln and Georgie preparing to drive to the reserve, and while Lincoln grabs the keys to the truck, there's a dead body on the ground and another living guy strapped to the chair. You can choose to kill him, but I don't, and it's not clear who killed the guy on the ground. So we move on as if nothing happened and drive to the Federal Reserve, where Lincoln is immediately greeted with racism. Lincoln treats racists with brutality, knocking out their escort and another 2 spewing hatred a room away. Vito provided a code to the vault which works splendidly, and they begin loading cash into sacks. But Georgie's greasy motherfucking ass sets off the alarm and relies on Lincoln for cleanup duty. He nearly doubles his kill count right outside the vault, but once it's time to escape, things go awry, and the drill doesn't work as planned. So when explosives are used, it sends the vault underground and traps Danny Burke's legs under some rubble. They load into a speedboat and hurry through the canals as police pursue them, hitting the stunt jump in style to lose them. Danny's leg is as fucked as your mother, so Lincoln carries him like a little baby and they climb up onto the street in the middle of Mardi Gras. Cops are swarming all over, so Lincoln volunteers to distract them with a street pop while the others get to the escape vehicle. He successfully evades them and meets them in the getaway car, and then outruns the fuzz. They count the cash and split it into separate piles so when Sal Marcano shows up, he can grab his share and a little extra for his trouble. Sammy has a look like he shouldn't trust this man, and unfortunately he's correct when Georgie tells Lincoln he shouldn't have declined their offer and shoots him in the head. Luckily for old Link here, that bullet just grazed him, so he watches as Danny Burke, his brother Ellis, and his father Sammy are all murdered with Sal's approval. They set fire to the bar, and Father James arrives right in time to drag Lincoln's big ass out of there so he can recover from his wounds. Once he's cognizant again, he makes his intentions clear. He wants to kill Sal Marcano. But first, he wants to slowly dismantle his organization piece by piece, killing every person he knows until he feels that suffocating feeling of isolation. Then once everyone he knows is dead, Lincoln will come for him and put him down for good. He stops by Sammy's derelict bar and gathers some things from the basement, then gives himself a haircut to show off that badass scar before he meets with his fellow vet Donovan, who has a whole operation set up to gather intelligence for Lincoln's plan. He suggests Lincoln start by recruiting the Haitians, who are pissed at Marcano for handing the district off to the white trash Dixie Mafia. Donovan isn't sure who their leader is, so Lincoln finds out by questioning a guy after killing two of his buddies. He tells him of a voodoo shop where he finds the woman from his raid on the Haitian camp, who most certainly is not being kept against her will. Cassandra played Lincoln for a fool so she could escape and agrees to help with his fight against Sal Marcano as long as she gains control of the Hollow District. Richie Doucette is the leader of the Dixie Mafia who assisted Sal in the downfall of Sammy Robinson. Soon after taking control of the district, Richie set up some heinous rackets utilizing slaves, but his whereabouts are uncertain, which means Lincoln has to lure him out of hiding. He starts by destroying their prostitution ring and freeing the enslaved girls. 30 members of the Dixie Mafia are sent right to hell during this little operation that kickstarts Lincoln's war against Marcano. But simply ending that cash flow isn't quite enough since the drug trade brings in a hell of a lot more. So after meeting with Donovan, he finds out the Dixie dipshits use a church to peddle H out of. So he does some questioning of lower level guys, but does a hell of a lot more killing to bring that racket down for good, getting nearly another 30 kills in the process. While ending these rackets, Lincoln gets the chance to either kill or recruit the low-level bosses. You either get instant cash or a larger sum over time, but as we see a little bit later, Lincoln shows mercy to the people that cooperate, like when a man Cassandra was torturing willingly gave up Richie Doucette's location. He at first looks like he's ready to kill him, but instead Lincoln sets him free. So in cases where mercy is reasonable, the opportunity is taken instead of spilling blood needlessly. Richie fucking loves amusement parks, so the fact that this one is abandoned is even better since crowds are minimal and he can simply walk on to any ride he wants, including Lincoln's Wild Ride. He completely decimates the 44 bodyguards Richie has employed as he systematically cuts them down with ease before he subdues Richie Doucette and makes a show out of his death by hanging him from a Ferris wheel.
Decent thing would be to let a man get in a prayer before you kill him.
You can pray on the way up.
Lincoln meets Cassandra to officially hand control of the Hollow over to her, but reminds her that money better be funneling up to him to fund his mission. To set a plan for what's next, Lincoln meets Donovan, who provides two suggestions. Recruit the Irishman Thomas Burke, who has just as much incentive to see Marcano dead as Lincoln does. His son Danny helped with the Federal Reserve heist, and as a reward was murdered in Sammy's bar. The other is Vito Scaletta, the seasoned mafioso that is being pushed out by Marcano. Lincoln elects to start with Burke, who needs a bit of convincing, but ultimately agrees to oust the new leader of Point Verdun, Roman Barbieri. He destroyed Burke's knee, so he's ready to get that big bitch back. Like Richie D before him, Barbieri needs to be lured out, and the methods are exactly the same. Destroy his rackets and impede the flow of money. He does exactly that, one by one, ending individual rackets, putting men to rest, killing off the leaders until Barbieri comes out of the woodwork. I applaud his main character syndrome, showing up and acting like he just needs to point and shoot, but he's a proven side villain that Lincoln injures and leaves for Burke to finish off. We don't know exactly how he died, but we know Burke took his sweet time with it and stashed his body in the trunk of a car that was pushed into the Mississippi River, to be found a couple decades later. Lincoln visits a shithouse Burke who is still hurting from his son's death, but he agrees to Lincoln's terms and goes to put the hurt on Barbieri some more. After recruiting the Haitians and the Irish, it's about time to get some Italians on his side. But when he goes to Vito's place, he finds Marcano has beat him there, so he takes them on for a swift 14 kills. He finds Vito tied up and frees him. He takes a little convincing to go after Marcano considering the circumstances. Sal assigned his nephew Greco to run Vito's district, so the plan is the same as before: bust up the rackets and lure the sucker out. Lincoln earns yet another large bump in murders here as he goes around the district ensuring the cash flow stops and the bodies pile up for an increase of 80 that already eclipses Vito's known kill count. After succeeding there, Lincoln and Vito meet outside of a home where Greco is at.
A lot of whoas in there. Probably face down a pussy right now.
They get armed, but Marcano has already sent a hit squad his way, so while he escapes them, Lincoln and Vito are forced back into their vehicle to give chase. Lincoln opens fire on 3 men hot on their tail, then they nab Greco so Vito can question the brat. It doesn't take long for him to talk, admitting Sal already opposed Vito's presence, who he felt was forced upon him by the commission, so he wanted to get his murder sanctioned by them once he stopped paying his dues. Vito offs the dude and agrees to help Lincoln now that his territory is back in his hands. Now that he has his 3 underbosses ready to roll, Lincoln calls a meeting. There's not an ounce of trust between them, but they have one goal in mind: kill Marcano and take the city. He explains the plan, which is similar to what he's been doing already: take down Marcano's lieutenants, then his capos, which will isolate Marcano and make him vulnerable. But before that gets started, Father James requests Lincoln's presence so he can say some proper goodbyes and get some closure. They drive to Sammy's bar, but as they approach, a bloodied woman runs out in a panic and flees into Lincoln's big-ass arms. There's still a few months until Halloween, so we know these mask-wearing weirdos are up to no good, and Lincoln puts an end to it right there. Afterwards, the father tells Lincoln where to meet them while he investigates the ruins of the bar, finding culty shit strewn all over the place. He drives over to the apartment Anna is being stashed in and finds out she joined up with those freaks willingly, known as the Ensanglante. They date back to when settlers originally landed in this region, and they quickly graduated to human sacrifice. Lincoln talks to Anna and shows her a playing card he found on a corpse in the bar, and she informs him that will get him into a bar the cult uses frequently. The bouncer is friendly with Anna and willingly helps Lincoln, leading him to a basement entrance where he lures the guard away. Lincoln finds 3 altars with each one dedicated to 3 different locations, so he heads out to investigate those, but the cult leader Bonnie has been drawing inspiration from Jonathan Crane and drugs Lincoln. But joke's on you, Bonnie, he loves this shit, and it amps him up to murder the 11 culty losers she leaves behind to finish him off. He drives all over the city, first investigating a middle school, then a warehouse where he fends off some cultists tailing him and finishes off some others who just wrapped up a ritual. Then he checks out the mansion of the cult's founder, Confederate General Braxton Harless. There are 5 cultists there foolish enough to think they can take Lincoln down. After he wipes the floor with them, he photographs a journal and drives back to Anna for some intel. Father James recognizes a symbol he saw in the abandoned opera house, which makes that Lincoln's next destination. He waits until dark, picking off 12 of them guarding the outside, then sneaks inside, finding even more cultists there as they honor someone on stage. I really wish I tossed a grenade or something here just to see how many I can kill in one go, but I digress. Instead, I take the slower route and find out the guy being honored earlier put a baby in Anna's belly after Bonnie coerced her into doing it. Seeing this angers Lincoln, so when the high priest fails to sneak up on Lincoln, his request is promptly granted.
Kill me.
Afterwards, he has to fight his way out, putting 26 more bodies on the kill count as he eliminates them inside the opera house. Throughout this DLC, they try jumping Lincoln in the streets, but like right here, I dodge them as I focus on the missions. He gets back to the apartment to find the father got some head trauma and finds Anna in the bathroom. As cults always do, they prey on the fragile, and unfortunately for Anna, they stuck their claws in deep. So instead of living like this, she ensures the cult's plans will never come to fruition and puts an end to it right there. Lincoln is furious, which pretty much dooms the cult on the spot as he travels to the island they're on and one by one kills every single one of them before confronting Bonnie. He follows her onto the roof, but lightning strikes the structure, temporarily stunning him and giving Bonnie the courage to bum rush him, but he sidesteps her easily, and when she attempts the same maneuver yet again, he pushes her to the ground, which sinks the knife she's wielding into her gut and finishes her off. Afterwards, Lincoln elects to bury Anna next to his family, mourning her needless death and letting the rain wash over him as he drives a convertible in the downpour. He meets up with Donovan a bit later, who provides his next target, Tony DeRazio. Eliminating Tony will be a major hit to Marcano's books and his ability to pay city officials, but the guy hardly leaves his penthouse. So like before, Lincoln has to find a way to lure him out, and this is everybody's major gripe with the game. It repeats this same loop with 9 different districts to advance the story. So to prevent myself from being too repetitive, you're going to see a lot of kills in a short amount of time while Lincoln kills off Marcano's underlings and assigns their rackets to his own underbosses. In the process of drawing Tony out, he tallies up another 76 kills while tailing and killing blackmail couriers and invading a bathhouse, mixing the already icky bathwater with blood to turn it into something horrific. This finally brings Tony DeRazio out of the safety of his penthouse, and because of Donovan's thorough wiretapping across the city, he overhears the code to the elevator in the hotel. So Lincoln can choose to barge into the lobby and go in loud, or go in using the underground parking garage, which is what I choose to do as it seems the smarter approach and the one Lincoln would take. It starts off quietly, but eventually gets messy while he bumps his kill count up by 30. He gets a stroke of good luck as Tony's dumbass misses with a rocket launcher and pays dearly for it, getting thrown out of the penthouse window for a dramatic death. He notices a ledger that has a lot of details that will prove useful in his campaign against the Marcanos, so he fights his way out, killing another 19 men to push that total count into the 600s. He meets with Vito, Cassandra, and Burke to remind them that he has final say in who takes what district and what racket, then heads over to Donovan to show him the ledger. After review, they verify Marcano is paying a judge to ensure the gambling laws in the city are changed. So to find out who this judge is, Lincoln goes on the attack again. He takes down more rackets to make the judge uncomfortable, so he reveals his identity. Lincoln spends his time in the French ward with murderous intent, wiping out various prostitution and drug trafficking rings, which nets him 82 additional kills. He joins up with Donovan again, who has been busy bugging every goddamn corner of the city, and informs Lincoln the judge's name is Cornelius Holden. He's overseeing a contentious race field trial that is sure to cause a ruckus once Lincoln puts him down. But the judge is concerned for his safety, so Marcano and some corrupt cops are protecting him in the meantime. There's a couple ways to approach this, but Lincoln as always plays it smart by tailing them until the cops split off, and as soon as Judge Holden exits the vehicle, he's blown to bits and pieces. With their ability to change the gambling laws crippled, Lincoln targets Sal's Trumpy brother next. He meets up with Donovan and gets the lowdown. Lou is attempting to brown-nose a senator to replace the judge and intends to hold a fundraiser for him on a riverboat. So Lincoln is going to stop that boat in its tracks and board it to put an end to Lou. There are 3 guys he quickly eliminates so he can set the charges on the coal dumper. Then once they're all set, he puts some distance between them and sets the explosives off as the river boat approaches. The explosion and wreckage destroys the boat, causing it to stop in its tracks and begin to sink with a portion of it on fire. I spotted 3 civilians fully engulfed in fire in the back, then watch as many more dove overboard into the welcoming mouths of some now well-fed gators. While I watched from the docks and from aboard the boat, I counted 32 civilians altogether that either died from the flames or from the gators. While on board the boat, Lincoln encounters 37 of Lou Marcano's men and guns down each and every one of them, before he catches up to Lou, who holds the senator hostage.
You think I give a shit about some politician?
Please!
Word up, Lincoln. An explosion kills the senator, putting another death into Lincoln's corner since he caused this mess, but it stuns both him and Lou and leads to a slow chase in the swamp until Lincoln catches up to him. He drags him away and kills Lou off screen, gutting him and tying him up to an Andrew Jackson statue. While things cool down a bit, Lincoln meets up with Donovan, who has a lead on a turncoat named Aldridge, who betrayed the US in Vietnam. They meet this mustachioed little dicky-looking ass who takes them to a bartender who last saw Aldridge. They roll up to the bar, but inside they find a massacre. Aldridge beat them there and killed the bartender, but a single survivor attempts to run for it and is quickly captured by Lincoln.
Why the fuck you running?
Have you seen you?
Fair point.
He brings the man back to Donovan, who questions him about what happened. Aldridge coerced some intel out of the bartender before killing him. providing the name and location of a CIA safe house in the city. Lincoln and Donovan race over there to find more carnage, but the perps are still on site and find a much more capable fight in Lincoln. They locate Aldridge in the process of questioning an agent, and luckily for him, there's a locked door and bulletproof glass between him and Donovan. The agent shows him a ground safe out of desperation, and Aldridge pulls out some files before finishing the agent off and leaving them to fend off more mercenaries. After some research, Donovan realizes Aldridge is looking for a nuclear missile that was lost during a botched operation, and coincidence has it that one of the operatives involved in that mission is working as a janitor in the city. Knowing Aldridge will go after him next, they race over there right as the power goes out, and they urge the man to stay low and nearby as Lincoln guns down 26 members of the Merc team. Right outside is a truck armed with a turret, making it an easy choice as their getaway vehicle, just so Lincoln can cause chaos in the streets of New Bordeaux and get a 44 kill increase. They take the guy to Dave Bird to get patched up and obtain some coordinates where the plane they were on crashed. Lincoln and Donovan take a boat to the island, and it's here where Lincoln gets a hefty bump in bodies as he almost hits that 4-digit marker. After murdering most of his hired guns, they corner an injured Aldridge, and Lincoln leaves Donovan there alone to get his revenge, and offload the nukes soon after. Once they're back in New Bordeaux, Lincoln resumes his quest, meeting Donovan and Barclay Mills to get intel on the district leader Enzo Conti. He's old school, and reportedly is not happy with Sal Marcano about the casino, so Lincoln wants to attempt to flip him to their side, and Donovan reminds him of his options.
And if that fails, you could always give him a Hanoi hangman.
Wait, what the fuck is that? Again, the repetition starts with Lincoln bringing down gun rackets and the waste disposal racket, which gets him over the bump and sets his total kill count to 1,067. After the cash flow more or less stops, Lincoln drops by Donovan's motel room and calls Enzo, who wants to meet in person down at the quarry. He recognizes Lincoln almost immediately and is more than willing to help him. He thinks Sal is openly trying to fuck over everyone he works with by building that casino and would love to see him fail. So he gives Lincoln another name, Remy Duval. He's a popular radio host in town and one of New Bordeaux's most prominent figures. He owns the land the casino is being built on and is Sal's single legitimate business partner. He lives in Frisco Fields under the surveillance of Olivia Marcano to ensure Remy doesn't get himself into trouble and risk the future of the casino. Shortly after providing this useful information, some of Marcano's meat bags arrive to make use of Lincoln's weapons, resulting in 42 more kills. He drops Enzo off in a motel, who will gather some things and get out of Dodge while Lincoln stirs more shit up in the city. Donovan informs him that Remy is part of the Southern Union, an organization that is basically the Klan in everything except name. So that's about to make taking over the next district even more satisfying. Lincoln does what he's been doing, eliminating various rackets, including decimating gallons of PCP.
Wow!
And destroying tons of racist paraphernalia across the district. And in doing this, he ends the lives of plenty more of Marcano's men, but stamps out the lives of a lot of racist dipshits. I took a slightly different approach here. Lincoln usually tries to avoid civilian deaths, but as we saw earlier on the riverboat, he doesn't care too much about the wealthy white elites that are more than happy to make his life more miserable. So I think he'd take this same approach here and couldn't care less if he kills civilians willingly attending and participating in Southern Union events. Donovan has Lincoln listen in to a conversation between Olivia and Remy, who is losing his mind at the fact that a black man is causing him all this trouble. He wants to respond and ignores Olivia's advice in doing so, meaning Lincoln just needs to find out where he's going. Lincoln does some hunting, finding a deacon for the Southern Union and killing his comrades before questioning him about Remy's whereabouts, and then ending him as well. Remy is putting together an old-fashioned hunting party, but they have no idea who they're dealing with and wind up getting ambushed in what is probably the most satisfying mission in the entire game, as Lincoln indiscriminately murders nearly every single one of these racist filth. He approaches a staunchly defiant Remy Duval and crucifies him to send a message to Marcano and the city. Lincoln drops by Donovan's afterwards, and a wiretap allows them to listen in to a tense conversation between Sal and Olivia. He's pissed Remy was such a fuckwit that he got himself killed and didn't name him in his will. So now that his land is passing to a relative named Stephen DeGarmo, Olivia thinks they can contest the will as a business partner and convince Stephen to sign the land over. So Lincoln wants to interrupt that little plan pronto, and with Donovan's assistance, sneaks into Remy's funeral armed with some CIA-grade LSD he spikes their drinks with. He blends in as waitstaff and wanders the place providing wine to any who need a refill, which after some time makes things here get wild.
See you at Sunday Mass.
Olivia elects to leave this madness, so Lincoln follows to a back room where he spots a gun behind the counter. He unloads on the 4 guys inside and subdues Olivia, who in all her hubris is surprised that a bullet could phase her. She tells him Steven is nearby, so Lincoln leaves her there bleeding, much to her surprise. He makes quick work of all the men outside and finds Steven badly hurt in a shed. He's rescued and driven to safety with Donovan. We later find out that Olivia was killed in the hospital by Georgie, so we know for certain she didn't succumb to the wounds Lincoln gave her. Lincoln gets a call from The Voice, a radio host who was deeply involved with the civil rights movement and trying to put together a case against the racist sheriff of Sinclair Parish, who abuses his power to create a sundown town to ensure the parish stays a nice creamy white. Slim openly kills people of color in the streets after dark, but this particular fella had a folder on him detailing all of his crimes. This town is deeply disturbing, with Lincoln getting chased as soon as he crosses the county border. They have allies in the parish though, and after avoiding the police get a breather while Lincoln meets MJ. He has a cop friend on the inside feeding them information, and the folder is being kept in Slim's office. So Lincoln goes right to the police station after dark and reduces the force by 10 while grabbing the folder. Roxy looks it over and realizes the cops have been kidnapping some of the names in the files, but the ones they haven't need their help, and with the parish locked down, they elect to cause a ruckus in town while MJ sneaks around gathering up the others. This scenario has Lincoln as the driver, so Roxy gets most of the kills, but Lincoln is able to grab some when they're stealing her car from lockup, and when Lincoln drops grenades out of the window or utilizes the environment for a few. Eventually, the cops catch up to them right before they leave the parish, putting Lincoln in a precarious situation that has Roxy saving him. Once he's free, Lincoln makes these racist-ass mofos pay for their crimes to push the kill tally over 1,300. Slim makes a run for it and they give chase, with Roxy doing her thing hanging out the window. Slim wrecks his vehicle and tries to crawl away with the folder, still spewing vile crap even as they corner him. He assumes himself dead, but instead they hogtie him and toss him in Roxy's car, with the intent of making him see justice for his crimes. But first, they have to outrun even more cops until they can finally offload him onto Roxy's father. The Voice asks how his daughter did, and Lincoln makes him uncomfortable.
She was better than all right. That girl is bad, Laveau.
Even though that feels like the end of this DLC, there's a few missions I didn't capture, but it did result in 38 more kills, while Lincoln ensured Slim's contacts on the outside couldn't impede his case. He goes back to New Bordeaux and meets Donovan. Next up is Tickfall Harbor. We repeat the same routine here, bringing down rackets and killing the men who are unfortunate enough to be called into work that day. This results in a hell of a lot of kills, as 111 more deaths are added to the kill count. He questions the dying Frank Pagani in the streets, who lets loose the name of a counterfeiter from Cuba that Sal brought in. Lincoln has a realization that the Federal Reserve heist was all a front to steal the plate so they can create the best counterfeit dollars on the market. He relays this to Donovan, who will work to locate Alvarez. But in the meantime, Lincoln goes to the 9th and final district to begin taking down Tommy Marcano's rackets piece by piece to land another 71 kills. He meets Donovan, who has Lincoln listen to a call with Alvarez calling his uncle back in Cuba in a panic. He's seen what Lincoln is doing to the Marcanos and wants out of here, but his uncle turns around and calls Sal right after they hang up and tells him where to find his nephew. So Lincoln races to the lighthouse he's hiding in and finds 6 of Marcano's men already there and puts them in the ground. He kicks down the door and is lucky as shit he isn't shot immediately. He convinces Alvarez that his uncle sold him out and that he's his only way out of there, which he proves true, while casually murdering even more of Marcano's men as they leave the area. He offloads the counterfeiter onto Father James, who has connections that can smuggle Alvarez safely out of the city. Lincoln meets an old friend of Sammy's who wound up betraying him and getting banned from the Hollow. So to make up for that, he quote-unquote recruits Lincoln into his underground fighting league, and even though he's wearing a jacket with his fucking name on it, these absolute morons buy the fake name and let him through. He's forced into fighting 3 other guys, KOing each one. On his way back to the locker room, Tommy Marcano waits and takes him captive, pouring a gasoline and vegetable oil mixture all over him because he likes the way it makes his skin look so slick and shiny. Lincoln aggressively frays the rope and somehow they don't notice that, which leads to Lincoln breaking this fool's arm and smashing his face into a chair for a KO. What follows is a shootout that gets 2 more killed and Tommy severely injured. Lincoln returns the favor with the gasoline, but makes sure to grab the counterfeit plates before doing so. He leaves Tommy there to be engulfed by flames. But Lincoln, you better watch out, dude, that shit is all over you. We don't actually see Tommy's death, but we know it happens as the fire spreads around the building, and Lincoln is forced into shooting his way out as he gets that kill count into the 1600s. On his way back to Donovan, he's ambushed on the streets of the French ward by a hitman, but Lincoln makes real quick work of him and his goons with a grenade and a brutal knife kill. Finally, after months of mayhem around the city, Lincoln has succeeded in dismantling Sal's operation. So when he meets Donovan at the motel, he's gathering his shit and getting ready to set it ablaze? What the fuck, man? Other people are in that motel. They listen to a final recording with Sal and Georgie planning to hole up in the casino and wait for Lincoln to find them. So he speeds in that direction as that banger soundtrack plays and begins his shootout with the final members of the Marcano crime family, netting 35 more kills before cornering Georgie. Lincoln lets Georgie know how much he hurt him, thinking they were friends, but Georgie was only ever on his father's nuts and would do anything for him, including dying a slow and painful death. Afterwards, Lincoln ascends the elevator to the top of the casino and joins Sal at his desk for a drink. He tells Lincoln he's not sorry for what he did to him and never felt shame for hurting others, but Lincoln wasn't looking for an apology, and instead wants to sink that knife into that motherfucker's knee and send Sal flying. Lincoln makes his way back to the ground level to find a familiar face to us rolling in. Leo Galante gets out to tell him the commission wants him dead, but he reassures Leo he only ever had beef with Sal. Leo says if he chooses to take Sal's place, then he only needs to kick back 20% of his cash to the commission and things will stay peaceful. But that's not the ending I think suits Lincoln best. He drives back to the city and Father James reminds him that he originally intended to go out to California. Donovan advises Lincoln to kill the underbosses he's working with if he decides to run the city, and then goes on his merry way. There are 5 endings to the game. Lincoln can choose to rule the city with his underbosses, which results in a major operation that expands throughout the southern United States. Or he can choose to rule alone and caps his underbosses, but he never gets the opportunity to rule as Father James plants a bomb in his car and he's killed right outside. I think Lincoln leaves the city as he originally intended, and any one of his 3 underbosses can take over. I personally don't see Thomas Burke being the one to do that, and even though the fandom pushes the Vito Scaletta ending, I actually think the Cassandra one fits best. Installing Vito as the ruler seemed to be replacing Sal Marcano with another guy who was a bit too similar. Sure, he's the most experienced and would have the easiest time with the commission, but Cassandra proved to be capable and also calls Lincoln's stomping grounds home. I wound up with her ending in my game even though I split all 9 districts evenly, and she has a hell of a time staking her claim, but she eventually does. As for what happens with Lincoln, well, he gets out to California, but stays on the run and sends Father James postcards from within and outside the US. And all the while, the government pursues him.
Someday, he's going to get tired of running, or make a mistake, and I'll be waiting. I promise you that.
And that's where Lincoln Clay's story ends. He's a hell of a lot different than Tommy Angelo and Vito Scaletta, but god damn is he a kick-ass protagonist. He completely outpaced those 2 in terms of kills. His final number was 1,642, which is 2.7 times the kills both Tommy and Vito had combined. I heavily favored silence weapons in this game because quietly taking down droves of enemies without them ever finding out is just so satisfying to me. Silence weapons made up 60+% of my entire kills, with machine guns consisting of just under 36% of the overall kill total, and handguns making up 29.72%. Marcanos and their allies made up the majority of the total deaths at 53.6%. It took me a whopping 25 hours and 55 minutes to finish the game, and despite the long runtime, it still gives us a kill on average every 0.95 minutes. I don't think Mafia the Old Country will even come close to this kill total, and I'm willing to bet Lincoln will remain the most prolific killer in the Mafia franchise for a long time. I enjoyed the hell out of the game despite its repetitive mission structure, and I'm really excited for the Old Country next year. Until then, I'll move on to other games, and as always, let me know what franchises and characters you'd like to see in 2025. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.